would be an investment in time, and that means learning how to do certain aspects of the music process and the business yourself. For me, that's like saved if you just want to talk about it from a financial aspect. I know a lot of artists are trying to figure out how to do it for a living, so if you do give all your royalties, like 50% to a label, 50% or 20% to a manager here, and all that stuff, not that that's wrong, and I think it works for a lot of people, but I think if you maybe take some of that time and like invest it in yourself as far as like learning those processes of like some accounting, learning how to promote your music, how to like present yourself, like a brand, all that kind of stuff, it can really like take you far and allow you to have some more flexibility.
You're listening to the Freio
Music Podcast.
To the Freio Music
Podcast.
Hey everyone, I'm Ryan Lindberg and I produce music as Koresma. I'm currently based out of Los Angeles and I make music that basically is soundscapes inspired by nature.
What first got you into music? Was there any turning point, trigger, memory that kind of piqued your curiosity?
Yeah, I was just really infatuated with music early on and just listening to stuff, and remember having like a really strong connection to like my little Walkman CD player and the radio, and I would just like, when you hear a song and you kind of get it on loop in your head, and back in the day we didn't have Spotify, so I sound old now, but I'm not really that old, and it's like, yeah, we didn't have Spotify, so you couldn't just replay it, so I think that kind of like started it all. I would just like sit in front of the radio and like wait for that song to come on again, and but yeah, after that, I started playing piano. I really wanted to play guitar, but my mom was pretty adamant about me playing a piano instrument first and kind of learning how to read music. And yeah, so I did that for like 2 years, and I never really, liked it that much. I hate to say that, but as soon as she let me take guitar lessons, I think which was at like the end of 5th grade, I started doing that, and then that's been my main instrument ever since.
Nice. Well, I do see some keyboards behind you, so she must have had some influence residing.
Yeah, it's definitely good. I think the piano is the most versatile instrument, especially nowadays with all the synthesizers, and I've kind of gotten into it like way after the fact, and it's like one of those things where you're like, oh, I wish I knew it back then and had studied it more, because it's so useful in like writing music and creating chords and compositions and all that.
Yeah, that's great. And so did you grow up in LA as well?
No, I actually grew up in Florida.
Okay.
I grew up I was born in Fort Lauderdale, but moved around a couple times, and my parents split up when I was pretty young, and my mom moved to the Florida Keys, so I spent the first like 8 years or through 8th grade in Florida Keys, and then after that went to Vero Beach where I did some high school, and from there I moved to Atlanta my senior year to live with my dad. And from there, I did like college and kind of graduated. And after that, I moved to Asheville for like a couple years. And now I'm in LA, so.
Nice.
Yeah.
So looking back, I mean, were you picking up influences from those areas that you lived? I've never been to the Florida Keys, so I can't really speak to it. But I'm curious what it was like. Was it impacting the music that you're making?
Yeah, definitely. I think, it's really kind of funny because I've been working on this project where I been doing 4 EPs, and I'm working on the 4th right now. But each one's been like kind of inspired more by like the location I've been in. And so this is kind of a roundabout answer, but moving to Los Angeles, I got closer to the ocean again, and living in the Florida Keys, you're surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean on one side and then the Gulf of Mexico on the other. And it's like you could throw a rock to either side. So I definitely feel like water and just the ocean in general has had a really big impact on me. And, musically, I was really into reggae music like early on. And my guitar teacher back in the day, his name's Dave Fader. He gave me a lot of influence with like the Spanish style stuff. And he's like a really good flamenco player. So I feel like some of that island influence was definitely fused into the music really early on.
That's great. So when you first started, when did you first of all, when did you pick up the guitar?
I think it was at the end of 5th grade, so I was about like 12 or 13 years old.
And did you have a teacher or a mentor at that age for the guitar?
Yeah, my guitar teacher starting out, and it's the only guy I've ever taken lessons from, was Dave Fader, and he's awesome, really, really insane, just flamenco guitarist or jazz guitarist, whatever you want. He can play it amazingly. So he was really cool. Like early on, I was kind of like ADD and, you know, just a lot of energy and couldn't really focus well. And so he kind of picked up on that and catered to my style. And I never really wanted to read music. And yeah, kind of like left me with the idea that you could just listen to music and figure out the notes. And so like, he was like, one day you'll be able to see like the notes you're hearing like on the fretboard, you know? And I don't know if I've ever been that like, you know, synergistic with it, but like, yeah, it's definitely I can like read, or I mean, hear things and then pick it up. And that's how I make music these days.
Yeah. So just going into that a little bit, cause I taught guitar for a few years. And I definitely could pick out the kids who couldn't stay focused on the chord I was trying to teach or something, but you know, they just want to play. So I'm curious about, you know, I think a lot of people learn that way by doing, and I'm curious what you think was key to developing that good like relationship with your teacher, as far as learning that you can apply it to the unknown, like you can explore areas that you didn't cover in class.
Yeah. I think it was really just him catering to my style. Like, you know, I didn't want to learn classical music. I didn't really want to learn how to read music. None of those things interest me, and he could tell. So he was like, let's learn how to do scales, and like, let's learn how to do solos, and then let's learn how to play songs and stuff like that. And it was really just like this listening thing. Obviously there was some theory and, you know, more structure he brought to it, but I think he just like focused on the fact that I could hear notes and then like find them on the guitar. And he was like, if you can do that, you can make all the music you ever want. So
nice.
You know, all the other stuff will kind of come, and I feel like you can learn, but as soon as you like build that relationship with the instrument and start figuring out little connections, you know, then you get like inspired to learn more stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about the first time that you ever started recording music. So making music's one thing, recording is kind of a different territory. So I'm just curious how old you were and where that all started.
Yeah. So basically there was two moments I'll bring up. One was like really early on, and that was before I ever thought of like actually recording, but but it's like kind of formative in some way. There was like this class you could take in my high school during like lunch period or something. I don't know how it all worked, but there was like lunch blocks. And one of those blocks was like this electronic music class. And we're using this software called Cakewalk by Sonar or something like that. And yeah, I took that class, and it was only like half a semester long. And I just remember making a couple beats in there, and you know, they were all super terrible. Like I didn't know how anything worked, but I couldn't even remember how to like recall sounds, you know, that you were like using in the software. But after that, I started recording in GarageBand when I graduated from high school. So like I think after my freshman year of college, like my sophomore year of college, I started recording in GarageBand, and it was just guitar, and I had like a USB microphone, and yeah, I was just making these like guitar pieces that were kind of songs, you know, but they had effects and stuff on them, but there was no drums or anything. It was like more just yeah, instrumental guitar stuff.
Interesting. Well, it sounds, obviously I don't know those songs that you're referring to, but it seems like that was a natural progression into the style of music that you're making currently, as far as being very guitar centric and having loops, kind of, I would say minimal. Not sure if you feel that way.
Yeah, for sure.
What were some of the major insights between when you first started recording to now, as far as like, oh, if I only tweak this or add that, it sounds so much better? What were some of the big breakthroughs, maybe on the technical side?
Honestly, like I started out with like only guitar, but then I got Ableton, and I was like, you can make electronic music. So I just kind of forgot about it for a long time, you know, and like I went down this rabbit hole. I was listening to a lot of like Flying Lotus and stuff like that. And so I was like, how do you make these like really crazy beats and everything? And So I caught really like onto this tangent of all sorts of different electronic stuff for probably like 2 or 3 years. And then I was like, oh, wait, you still play guitar, you know, like what if you use that? I was realizing I couldn't really write that good of melodies just with a keyboard or, you know, like clicking on a mouse and stuff like that. So kind of like for me, it was like the voice of the music. So I brought that back in. And I think taking that tangent and learning a lot of electronic stuff kind of helped and kind of created this like fusion of both of the worlds.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I definitely hear that now that you mentioned that tangent happened. So what kind of brought you, what brings it all together, and what were some of the major like insights that you've had over the years?
Definitely simplicity. You know, I've been in that boat where you try too many ideas at once and you really can only have one melody playing at once, and anything in the background kind of needs to support it or like create harmony with it. You can obviously do whatever you want in music, but yeah, I think simplicity was the biggest one, and finding out what your vocal element is. I think it was, I forgot who said this, but I think it was based off of this guy, Oteil Burbridge, who was a bass player, and he was talking about how like breathing's really important with your music. And so if you're not breathing, you can't they're not going to be things you can sing, you know what I mean? So I kind of took that simplistic approach to my guitar playing, where it was more like, okay, play the notes you can actually like sing with your mouth, and like don't think too complex with it, and have that space as well.
Interesting. So when you're writing a new element or a new song, do you sing it first? Do you play the guitar first?
Sometimes it's like I'll have an idea and I'll record it on my voice memos. The voice memos is like where I would say most ideas start in some capacity, you know. But yeah, guitar is definitely the easiest one for me to get out an idea. And a lot of times now we have like really cool tools in Ableton where you can take a line and convert it to chords. So I'll play a chord progression or a melody, and then I'll like switch that into like MIDI. And then that then be like I can put it on synthesizer or put it on some like an e-piano patch or whatever like that, and you just get a lot of different variety then.
Gotcha. And then so let me just make sure I'm understanding you right, because this is kind of new to me. But you play a melody and then it generates chords for you.
So you can do one of two options, or I guess there's more options now. But with it's called audio to MIDI, and you can choose harmony or melody. And so basically, when you choose that, it'll either give you a one note line or it'll give you like a multiple note line, which would be the harmony. And I'll just basically play something, and then we'll have it switch over. It gives you some really cool results that you may not have played either. So it can be kind of cool just to switch it up a little bit.
Okay. And then you get to manipulate it in the MIDI realm rather than the audio.
Yeah, exactly. I sometimes I'll go the opposite way too, where I'll play a melody on the keyboard, but then I'm like, that would be a way better guitar line, and it sounds more natural, you know?
Interesting. So then in that circumstance, do you play it on the guitar, or do you try and make your keyboard sound like a guitar?
I'll play it, yeah. I'll just take the notes and then just play it, because it'll just come out differently. That's something I've realized about like my playing or just the music process for me is, first of all, I don't consider myself that good of a guitar player. Like, I feel like it's just, you know, I found like a unique style maybe I can do for myself. And just kind of use that as a way to get to cool options.
Let's dive into some of your recent works. I know you're doing the 4-part series that we've got the final part coming out soon. So if you want to bring the listener on that journey. So where did it all start? I know it's landscape inspired.
Yeah, it started, I had the idea really early on, but I didn't know how to do it. You know, it was like pretty daunting. And I had been releasing music and had a couple tracks that had gotten a little traction. And I didn't really want to like drop off the face of the earth for 3 or 4 years to finish it. So I decided to release them one EP at a time under the theme of the compass. And like I really love vinyl too. That was a big inspiration for it as well, because I was kind of seeing it as like a finished product. You could have like each side of the vinyl be a different EP. So I had east, then west, and north, and now working on south. But yeah, I could dive into like the inspiration behind each of those if you want.
Sure, yeah, go as deep as you want.
Well, east started with this track called Bridges, and I didn't no Bridge is going to be on it, but that's been one of my more popular tracks and one I really connected with as well. I feel like it was kind of like the first track where I feel like I kind of found my style, even though we never really find it fully. You know, I feel like it's always an exploration, but yeah, that was like the moment I was like, okay, I want to do this. Really, like that was like the theme. Yeah, so that kind of started with that song. I released it as a single and then put that onto the East EP. And I was living in Asheville, North Carolina at the time. And Asheville was like a really cool kind of hippie mountain town, super lush forests. And I was actually working for a company called Moog Synthesizers then too.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah. And so it was a lot of electronic music influence being put into it and a lot of hiking and just, you know, all that forest element and mountains and stuff. And so, yeah, that was really the theme of the East EP and kind of shaped those songs that were on it.
Well, let's dive into Bridges a little bit since you brought it up, and I didn't realize that was kind of how it started. I'm curious about that song in particular.
That one's funny. I actually started a long time ago before it was released, so maybe like 2 or 3 years, and it went through like 4 or 5 different versions.
That's cool.
And yeah, I could actually find one of the older versions, but it was, you know, it was like an exploration time. You know, it didn't have the simplicity was really the main aspect of it. It was almost like drum and bass at one point, like really crazy drums. But the main thing I remember writing the chord progression, and it took me a while to like really figure out what it was trying to do. But I had this like basic chord progression that is throughout the whole song, and that was like one of the only things that kind of lived. And then after like a couple years, I moved to Asheville, and I was like starting to do singles and just like really like focus on getting music out there. And so I was like, okay, I got like a month to finish this track. I know it's good. Like, what's in there? So I spent like a month working on the song, and yeah, I was like able to find that like acoustic pattern, and then kind of everything came around that.
Was this like all in your head? Were you sharing it with other people? Were you playing it and getting feedback? How did that?
I sent it out once. I remember it was like closer to being finished, and like a week or so before I was going to release it. And I remember like one of my friends was like, the snare transient's too loud. Like, you need to soften that. And I was like, okay, that was actually good feedback. And I ended up doing that.
Nice.
But I actually didn't send it around for that much feedback as like earlier tunes. So yeah, I was kind of in this like really I don't know, personal space with it. So it was kind of obsessive at the same time. But yeah, it was cool. I don't know. I feel like for that track, I felt like it was like the best work I could do at that moment in time.
Yeah, well, it's a beautiful result and beautiful piece of art. Is there any element of it that really speaks to you? Any particular riff, any particular moment in the song?
Yeah, I mean, the acoustic part I really love. And I think it was really like embracing the imperfections in that track, because I actually like spent a whole day, I put like blankets up in my bathroom and like recorded the riff probably like 40 times, you know, trying to like get it better and more perfect. And I realized like there was just something in that one take that I couldn't replicate again. And yeah, that was really one of the main things. And there were some cool sounds too in there that were like just random and just, I don't know I guess like esoteric in a way. Like they didn't really have any sort of meaning, but they created this cool vibe. Like there's this one little like squeaking sound. It was actually, a lot of people like equate it to a dog like squeaking, but it's actually a door handle, and I recorded that when I was like teaching this music production summer camp a long time ago.
Interesting. So you just recorded that sample and happened to decide to toss it in at that moment?
Yeah, I don't know. I had like, so because it went through so many versions, I had like so many little random cool snippets of sounds and stuff, and most of them didn't fit in, but I feel like they kind of gave it like some of the interesting, you know, like one-off, or I forgot what the right word is for that, but anyways, just like little random things that happen throughout. Incidentals, there you go. Like things in a song that happen only like once or twice that are just kind of cool and unique.
It seems like creating so many different versions of that particular track in experimenting, going down this road, or you know, a little extra energy, and then going down on the acoustic road or minimal, and then eventually you seem to converge them all. It feels like maybe you found the best ideas of all of them and figured out what notes are the core, and like if you just remove one, well, it's not as good, because it doesn't seem like there's a lot of excess, if that makes sense.
No, you're right. I think totally it was about just finding the best of each. I do that honestly in a lot of my music. It's gotten less. I think like I don't create as many different versions these days, but some tracks have still like 3 or 4 versions. But yeah, I try to commit like sooner. But yeah, I don't know. It was cool. That process was really fun and kind of frustrating at the same time, because each version I was like, I like this, but there's just something not right about it, you know? Like I don't know what it was, but just didn't have the feeling I was looking for.
Mentally, how do you push through that and tell yourself, hey, you got this, like you'll just figure it out. It's the next take, or it's the next layer, versus saying, nah, it's just not working, I'm going to move on to the next song. How do you balance that?
For me, that was, I think, there was a track I released before that where I had a lot of guitar on it called Faraway Coast. And before that song, I had taken a bit of a hiatus, and I had actually moved to Asheville then. And so it was like kind of like a bit of a, you know, moving and just reacclimating to new space and everything. And so I think with Bridges, I was like, okay, the guitar is like the main focus, and then beats on the back end and electronic stuff after that. And that simplicity really helped that song, because otherwise I would have tried like a million different leads and a million different sounds. And I think that was what the problem was earlier on, was I didn't know what to commit to. It was just like I was trying too many different things.
What do you mean you're what to commit to? Is that like a layer that you're talking about, a melody?
Just like what the focus of the song was, like what does the lead, or what's like the vocal. I mean, obviously it's instrumental music, but I try to think of what element is going to like basically represent the voice, like that singing element in the song.
Yeah. Let's dive into that, because that's kind of interesting. You brought that up now at least twice, but like I'm just curious, what is it about the voice that feels like the root of the song or the core in some element?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something we all have, you know, first. So it's like really human element. And I think people speak and kind of interpret music in that way in some degree. And I think there's something natural about playing a melody that you can sing. I actually took a music theory class in college, and there was like a part of it called like aural skills, and they made you like, you have to like sing all the notes, and there was like certain intervals they wouldn't let you do because it's not natural for the voice to do that. Obviously jazz like breaks that, but yeah, it's like kind of, I guess some of that influence right there.
Well, let's talk about go back to Compass. What was the second one that you created?
Yeah, the next EP was called West, and that one was kind of me dreaming of moving to California, honestly, because the desert and just like the drier climate and the red, you know, and like orange rocks and super blue sky, something I've always been really connected to. So I found like a lot of inspiration for that in that EP.
And this was when you're living in, was it Atlanta?
I was living in Asheville at that time.
Oh, okay. So you actually weren't in the West, you're dreaming of the West.
Yeah. I remember I wrote like an email to when I released the track, and or like the whole EP, and I was like, it's kind of like me dreaming of moving west. It's like something I've always wanted to do. And yeah, that EP, I don't know, I just kind of like put myself in a different space for it, and it was kind of fun. I was talking to a few people that had like drone footage, and they sent me some drone footage from out west, and I was able to like incorporate that into like the visual aspect, and also some water. There was one track on there called Turquoise, and actually like worked with a friend who he had like shot some surfing footage of him like actually in the water, and we used that for the music video for the track. I
mean, we could dive into a lot of these songs, so I'm holding myself back, but Canyon Walls. So it sounds like some of that guitar is in reverse. Do you think it through backwards, or do you play something and then just reverse it?
Oh yeah, it's always just play it and then reverse it.
Okay.
I wish I had that much like, you know, intention behind it, but yeah, Canyon Walls actually has there's a part in there where it's like acoustic in the beginning that's reversed.
Yeah.
And that one, I just was like, I don't know what to put there, honestly, and then I just tried that. I was like, that sounds cool.
Nice. seems like it starts with an idea in your head, meaning like I want to be out like in the Grand Canyon or something. That's kind of how I imagine that song. And then how do you embody it and then play it, if that makes sense?
Yeah, with like that track in particular and some of the songs on that album, I had seen an artwork. The artwork that I used for the EP was by this guy, Andy, too. And he had this one shot, and it was just this beautiful picture of like looking up from Antelope Canyon, if you're familiar with that spot. And like it's just got like the red rocks on the side, and then it looks like there's almost like a river of the sky like flowing through, but it's like super blue. And so that was like the starting point. And then my little brother had actually taken a trip out west, and he had got some really cool photos. So I was like, could I use a few of those? And he was like, yeah, here you go. And so by looking at the photos, I was like, that's really helped me get the names of the song.
Okay.
But with Canyon Walls, it was more, I remember I wrote that one really quick. It was like the initial idea and arrangement was probably about 3 days or so. And I just like locked myself in the studio and just like, I don't know, it's just like chasing something.
There's one element of that song. I don't know exactly how to describe where it is, but there's a sound that enters, and its tail is like 15 or 20 seconds. And it creates this underlying layer, and it just like floods this huge sonic space. I'm curious about that. What was it, and how did you know to put it in?
Yeah, that song actually started on my Sub 37, which is a Moog synthesizer, and I was using this thing called an arpeggiator on it, so you can make a sequence, and it's really cool because you can type in the notes, and then it'll play it back, and it'll just keep this pattern looping. And so I had this pattern looping, and then I remember I like was recording, and then I went over, I have a little like drum machine, this thing called an SP404, which a lot of guys in like the lo-fi world use for effects, but I actually like put samples on it, and I just was like playing the drums, like boom, clack, boom, and then that was like created like the bass of the rhythm for it. And so after then I just put a chord progression with the synth again, with the Moog synth, with the bass notes. So that kind of like created the like core of the song there. And then from there it was adding in a lot of guitars, because that was like, okay, I got to add some like melodies, you know? And yeah, like the drums too. I like to use like breaks from like old hip hop songs, or I guess hip hop songs sample the breaks, but the breaks are from like old funk or like classic rock songs. And that was like some of the hi-hats and the groove there.
I mean, I am curious about that really long sound.
Yeah, sorry, I kind of dodged that.
It's okay, but we don't have to get in. It's the secret sauce, I'm sure.
That was the Moog synth ARP right there. So I just put Ableton's reverb on it, and I've done this thing where you pull it from dry to wet and kind of automate the decay time at the same time, and that just gives you basically a pad. And I thought it sounded really cool because I was opening the filter on the synth, so it started out more plucky, and as you open the filter on the envelope, it becomes more open and sustained and just more harmonics there. And so when I did that, like it was just at the end of the progression, like that I opened that filter, and at the same time of doing that with the reverb, it goes wah, like kind of creates that washy sound you're talking about. Some of it didn't necessarily seem like technically right, but I don't know, it just felt cool. And I really like that kind of epic ambience, if it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it's huge.
And that was kind of what it did there.
So that was west, and let's keep moving down.
Yeah, the next EP was north, and that one was a little more difficult. I started that in Asheville, but I moved to Los Angeles during that time and finished it up here in the studio I'm in right now. And that studio is also my bedroom, but
that's the way to do it.
But yeah, long story short, I had a song that I was thinking might end up on West, but it just didn't fit. It had like a colder tone to it. I don't know how to describe it. It just felt colder. So that was like the first and like track from North, which was called Free. And I worked with a vocalist who has done a couple tracks with me over the years named Alaska Reed, and she provided the vocals on that track, which were like really cool and airy and ambient. That's just kind of was like the DNA, I guess, for that EP, and I created a couple tracks around that. And I like one thing I'd like to do for my EPs is have them all be in a similar or relative key. And so that was just, yeah, how that all started for that one.
Is that based on mood? Is it based on just experimentation or creative limitation? Why do you choose a key?
It's actually for the live show. So when you play, you can like have them melt together, and it also makes it feel like it's one experience too. Like it just seems like it's intentional to all be like in one thing. And they don't have to be like everything in A minor, or everything in like one key, but it's cool if there's like some relativity between it. Just makes it feel like it's more one project.
You are currently working on South. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, South is the next EP.
Nice. And that is scheduled this year, 2021?
Yeah, the goal is to have it out in the fall. So it's got quite a bit of work to do on it still, but hopefully by the time people are hearing this, it's pretty much done with. We
don't need to spoil what's coming. I mean, I'm sure the listeners are going to be able to check it out, and I'm excited to as well. But I'm curious, you know, you're building these, you mentioned the live experience and how that's shapes how you record. Well, this past year, I imagine you, like everybody else on Earth, had their regular routines disrupted. So I'm curious how that affected you, like the live performance or creation or any kind of challenges that you worked through. I'm curious.
Yeah, no, I actually kind of stalled on working on South last year. I feel a little bad about it in some ways, you know, like I wanted to have it out last year. So internally, I'm like, I didn't hit my goal, you know, so it kind of sucks. But at the same time, I'm like, life just happens for a reason in some ways. Like you just have to go with the flow. And so last year I kind of switched gears and did a lot of remixes. Like I did a remix for Emancipator, which was really cool. And then I did a lot of collaborations as well virtually. And I don't know, I think it was such a weird time where we were all like isolated that being able to work on music that had other people involved with it was like much more fulfilling for me. So I also kind of wanted to be able to go around and get some cool visuals around California. And, you know, much of the state was really locked down. So you like pretty much couldn't camp anywhere for a long time. Like just campgrounds were closed. And yeah, we're just getting back to normal life now.
So I'm curious on that, like remix that you did with Emancipator. Did you know him? Did you know Doug prior, or did you did he reach out to you, or did you reach out to him? How did that work?
Yeah, that came through his label. Okay. I had done a tour with them right before coronavirus hit. It was the last shows I actually played, nice. Which was a pretty epic way to end playing shows. We did a tour actually through Colorado, and we played in like Durango. We played in Aspen and Telluride, and
cool.
Yeah, it was really fun. And yeah, so that came through his management, or I guess the team there.
I just think you know, 2020 proved so interesting that I feel like artists are taking unconventional approaches, you know, now. But I'm just curious, you know, if you see the industry shifting in a way away from in-present performances or to something else.
I definitely see a shift happening, and I'm not fully sure what it is yet, but I do think, like, you know, a lot of people hopped on the live streaming thing right when coronavirus hit, and I did a couple, but it just doesn't feel super natural for me. So like, I didn't really double down on that aspect. Kind of actually just doubled down on like making music more and like being in the studio a lot. And because there wasn't shows happening, you know, you didn't really have to switch gears like that. But yeah, I don't know. For me, I'd love to get back into shows and see those happening, because I think that's like the coolest way to connect with people, probably on both sides, you know. It's like for the audience and for the performer. It's just, yeah, it's a really cool exchange that happens there. So hopefully we can do that soon.
Yeah, no kidding. I hear you. There's nothing that replaces a concert in person, and I imagine being on stage is just that amplified. So That is interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. I think it's cool though, the way we've had to adapt. You know, a lot of people have had to switch things up, and it's been rough, I know, for so many, like during this time. But it's like at the same time, it's kind of cool in some ways that we can have opportunities still and figure out ways to make things work. So I see like the live streaming as one. I personally have like maybe put more effort into social media because I see that as a way like you can actually connect with people and provide some value to them, and also like gain some sort of momentum with your project. So it's kind of like done some of the stuff you hope to do through shows or something like that.
Yeah. And do you work with a team as far as organizing all that stuff?
No, it's all independent right now, so it's a lot. Sometimes it's a lot, but yeah, I don't know. I've had a few opportunities, but they just haven't really felt right. And
for sure,
I guess I'm just like kind of OCD about it.
Yeah, well, you're crushing it. So I'm curious now that we know that, how do you manage all these competing demands on your time? Right, you could be doing this or that.
Yeah, I mean that's a great question.
How do you
man.
keep your focus?
I think saying no is really important, and it's not something that comes natural to me. So I've had to learn how to do that, and it's better than saying yes and not being able to come through, or like, you know, having to decline later on, which, you know, I'm sure that happens to everybody in whatever field they're in. And so, yeah, saying no is a big one because it's just a quicker, like better thing for you and them, you know, if you don't want to do the opportunity or it just doesn't make sense. Sometimes you miss stuff, you know, because you're just not in the space to really like think fully through it, and well, that happens. But yeah, I don't know. Also, like segmenting your time too. I've been trying to get on a better schedule, and just like work towards a little bit of like social media business stuff every day. But then like at a certain time, like switch to music and then do that.
And what time's your switch time?
I'm trying 12 o'clock right now.
Yeah.
So like lunchtime,
Okay.
I try to do, I'm like, okay, let's get the like stuff I hate to do, which is like the business, you know, hate's a strong word, but like the not fun stuff.
Yeah.
And
But you
then
gotta
it's like,
do it.
okay, once I start making music, it's going to be like all day after that.
Nice. Well, I think that's awesome. I think there's a lot of wisdom there that you put the stuff that like is a little bit draining up front, you know, that takes a little bit more willpower or effort to push through, and then you reward yourself with doing what you're going to do anyways, and that's the reward, but that's also the product that you're working on. So
yeah, oh, disclaimer, that is a new thing for me. I've been on the binge mentality before, so it's like, okay, I binge music for like a few days, and then it's like, okay, now I got to do other stuff, and I've just realized that's not a sustainable way to continue and like do things as more things happen. So you just have to like switch it up and try different stuff at some point.
No, yeah, that's great. I'm glad it's working for you. It sounds like a good system. So what time do you typically get to bed if you start at noon?
Yeah, no, I mean, I start the first like stuff at like earlier, so probably around like 9. But I normally try to get to bed at like 11, 12 o'clock. I'm just I wake up when the sun's up pretty much. So
nice.
Yeah, if like 7:45 is like my natural alarm clock, and I'm like up every day, regardless of what time I go to bed, really. So I kind of just have to go to bed earlier, otherwise I'm sleep deprived.
Yeah, you have to. When you're making music, like, when are you most productive? Do you go through waves? If you carve out that time consistently, do you realize that, oh man, some weeks I'll make 3 songs in a week. Other weeks I'll make 0 songs.
Yeah, it's an ebb and flow, really. I think like it can't get too wrapped up in it being like I got to produce 1 track a week or something. I mean, maybe some people can function like that, but I just kind of like roll with it because sometimes like it's more important to make stuff for social media. It's like more important to really focus on a release, especially if you're doing it independently. So sometimes music takes the back burner for a little bit, and then there's also times where like, you know, I don't check my email or don't like do social media stuff for a while and like only make music. And so I'm trying to like for sustainability have like both of those happen every day. But yeah, it sometimes changes for sure.
Life happens.
Exactly.
Yeah. What purchase of $100 or less in like roughly the last 6 to 12 months has improved your life the most? Could be anything. Could be.
Honestly, I think I've got a standing desk, but it's kind of low, and I got this little riser for my monitor, And I realized like just having my neck tilting down was like contributing to a lot of neck pain.
Oh, okay.
And
Nice.
yeah, that like I don't know if that was what
So
you're
it's just like a
hoping for.
shoebox that rose your monitor.
Basically, yeah, I got this little thing for like $30 off Amazon.
That's great.
And yeah, that was like really, really awesome. And it's actually like I haven't had neck pain really that much since then.
No, that's awesome. That's a great one. And you got $70 to spare, so that's good.
Yeah.
All right. What perceived failure, and in your mind it may or may not be a failure, but what perceived failure set you up for success in the end?
Yeah, okay. I mean, I can talk about it last year. I moved to Los Angeles and I was hoping to have my North EP out before I moved. And I didn't have that happen. So that seemed like a failure to me. But long story short, I moved to LA and I got connected with the label manager for Loci Records, which is Emancipator's label. And they did a season 2 compilation album. And that track actually did really well. And the track I like submitted for that did really well. So I kind of switched gears for a little bit. And that kind of like opened up some opportunities, I think, when the North EP came out. Like I had really wanted it to be out in May, but it ended up coming out in October. So, you know, for me, that's like I totally missed the mark. But at the same time, that was like something I learned. I was like, you just kind of have to flow with it because you never know the opportunities or things that happen along the way that are maybe going to help out something like later on.
Well, it's out there, right? Like you might beat yourself up and say that you missed the mark, but hey, you know,
it's out, you know,
out.
and like if I would have
awesome.
released it earlier, maybe it wouldn't have had like the same impact or something like that, and or done as well or whatever. So it's I think like a lot of artists like beat themselves up about deadlines, and it's like kind of have to just be patient with yourself and realize we're all human, you know.
All right. What's one of the best investments you've ever made? It could be time or money, but like putting thought and effort into something.
I guess it would be an investment in time, and that means learning how to do certain aspects of the music process and the business yourself. For me, that's like saved, if you know, you just want to talk about it from a financial aspect. I know a lot of artists are trying to figure out how to do it for a living. So if you do give all your, you know, royalties, like 50% to a label, 50% or 20% to a manager here and all that stuff, not that that's wrong. And I think it works for a lot of people. But I think if you maybe take some of that time and like invest it in yourself as far as like learning those process of like some accounting, learning how to promote your music, how to like present yourself, like a brand, all that kind of stuff, it can really like take you far and allow you to have some more flexibility with your stuff. So for me, that's been like probably the biggest one. And it's also not the easiest one, you know, because it's definitely hard sometimes. But I think like it's been rewarding in a lot of ways.
How did you start teaching yourself? Where did you learn? It's not the most common path to go down necessarily.
Yeah, I was kind of lucky. I've had some really cool friends over the years that have been on the same path. So we've learned a lot, I feel like, from each other. And I was also in a music business program in my college. And that was not like a full degree, but it was like a certificate program. And they put us into some internships and things of that nature. So was able to get some like first like hand experience with how people did things, and also like meet some cool people like through that whole process. And yeah, that would probably be like the way it all started. But you know, digging deeper, then it's like, okay, how do you like get your music out there? And you find like blogs, and it's all kind of changed now with like the playlisting and everything. And but yeah, that was like the beginning stages of it.
If a new artist was approached you today and said, you know, I want to learn about the music business, what should I know? You know, like, is there a resource that you'd point them to? Is there a concept, idea, just a thought framework? You know, how would you approach that?
Definitely. I mean, like, first of all, stay authentic to yourself. Don't try to like change or be something you're not, you know, and make music that you think is like the time or it like whatever the trend right now, because that always changes. And I feel like if you're making music that's like the trend, it's going to be not the trend very quickly. So I think just, yeah, that authenticity is really important. But also just like looking at the artists who have done it before you that are in the same kind of, like, I like to say it could be in the same playlist as you. So yeah, seeing where they've been placed, like seeing what magazines have written about them, just like kind of reverse engineering it. I actually was reading about Pretty Lights, and I forgot how they did it, but they basically went through MySpace and just messaged people their music, you know, and like I thought that was really cool. They like reverse engineered a lot of things, and I try to take some of that approach to what I've done.
You've mentioned to me that you give away your music for free to those who aren't able to buy it. Now, of course, it's donation based. Like you could definitely contribute for the music, and you should if you can. In your business mind, like what's the value of giving away your music for free, just for somebody who might not get it?
At first, yeah, it didn't really make sense. I had some friends who influenced me too to do that, and I thought it was cool because obviously Pretty Light's music is so awesome, and I was like, man, he gives us all away for free, and I just remember that feeling like I had when I was able to download it all and like just listen to it on loop, and it was really awesome. So I was like, maybe that can happen for somebody one day with my music. But yeah, it also is just like allowing them to give you the value they think it's worth, and also like I guess promotion wise, it's maybe more chance to get it out there if people don't have to pay for it. You know, it's like less barrier to entry. And
then you also get email lists, and do you work with that and your social media accounts?
Yeah, I think like Bandcamp is probably the biggest one for me where I collect that. And so there is like an exchange there. If they want to download the track, they have to give you your email. So you can get them on your email list and keep them updated with future projects and everything like that.
When you are out of not focused, or you're not in the creative flow, and you're sitting down, you're trying to make some music afternoon after you've done all the business stuff, what do you do when things just aren't clicking? How do you reset your mind or get back into the flow?
I'm glad you asked that question because we talked about guitar a lot earlier, and that's definitely like probably my biggest inspiration point. But I'd say like the second is samples. So, just make a track with like music that's not yours and see what happens, like it could be a remix, it could be whatever. I think there's like this producer that produces for Drake. There was like a video I watched on YouTube a long time ago where you'll actually start a track with a sample, take away the sample, and then it's like a new song, So for me, samples, I don't really do it that way. I more like use them as like color. So I think samples are just really fun to use and like allow you to get some inspiration that may not have come there before.
So when you're stuck, you just go to a sample library and start digging through and just, oh, there's something. And that might...
Yeah, sample libraries, new synths, like our new synth patches. Obviously new instruments are cool too.
Yeah.
I think like learning something new is a huge one. Like just learning how to play a song on guitar. Like for me, I'll always like find something from that. Like I just hit a different chord I didn't mean to hit, and I'm like, oh, that kind of sounds cool, you know?
Yeah. Happy accidents, like Bob Ross.
You got it, man. Exactly. I mean, I think it's like more just like one of those things when you're not inspired is just, I think, sitting down and doing the work too, and just getting into it. Because I think I've actually talked about this with my dad, and he's like, yeah, you can't always make music when you're not inspired. And I was like, that's not true. You just like have to sometimes fight through it and find ways to get inspired. So that got so many tools these days with samples. Like I really like looking to old vinyls, like that kind of old hip hop type mentality, and seeing what you can find there.
And then you mentioned Ableton already. Is that your preferred workstation?
Yeah, Ableton's been other than GarageBand, it's been the only DAW I've worked in.
Nice. So when do you know a song is finished? I know some of them have gone quickly, some have taken years. So how do you know?
Yeah, that's a really tough question. I think it's gotten easier, like as you continue to go through the finishing process. Because I realized just as much as like starting tunes and creating ideas and playing and everything, like you also have to like practice finishing, and that process, like if you don't do it for a long time, is really daunting and like kind of intense. So I think like just realizing kind of what your intention for the song is, and why I say it's gotten easier is because like I kind of know more now like what I want to do, but starting out you don't really know what you want to do, so you're like trying all these different ideas. So I would say just trust your gut for sure, like the feeling, make sure that's right. And there's a certain point in a song when it's kind of like, this feels right, you know what I mean? And then like doesn't need any more, and then it's like mixing it, and then that's a whole nother, just like another process. But yeah, I was gonna say there was something else I was thinking of, but that would be the main things.
For sure. And then you kind of mentioned that when you're creating some of those songs, you're not actually getting that much feedback or showing it to people. It's kind of underworks. Once you do get it out there, do you pay attention to the feedback? Do you want to read that blog post about your work, or do you want to see that tweet, that responded? Or
Sure. I mean, yeah, I'm always open to feedback. There's actually a thing called Submit Hub these days, and they're very vocal with their feedback. And yeah, sometimes I think it's like irrelevant, but at the other times it's like really beneficial. So I think like it's all like, I think through like Submit Hub, when you're submitting to a lot of different things, you can kind of get like a general thing that they're trying to say through all the different feedback. Like, oh, this track could use a vocal. That means like they don't really like instrumental tracks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's all subjective, but
Totally.
yeah.
And what about the negative comments? Because those are inevitable, in my opinion, online. So
Yeah.
does it just roll off your back? Does it drive you nuts? Do you get worked up? Like how do you deal with it?
I mean, I've been releasing a EP with my friend Matt May, and it's just like a 3-track EP we've done collaboratively, and we got a comment on our Facebook post that was like, "This is total garbage, y'all," and like that doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, oh, what? This is one person's opinion, and like, what are they doing? Are they releasing music? Like, I don't know. You just kind of have to like let it roll off and not get too affected by it, I think, because I don't think the music is absolute garbage. You know what I mean? Like, it sounds good, and then there's also like a bunch of other people who thought it sounded good too, so it's just like one opinion. Oh yeah, there was like one other thing I think on like the topic of like finishing things that might be helpful for some people, and it's kind of like on the reverse engineering wavelength, and I actually would like throw a track in and kind of like just look at the arrangement and kind of like structure my song similarly, and I think that's something that can be really helpful for a lot of people starting out, because like you don't know how to get a song out in a certain amount of time. Maybe like there's just too many open ends, and possibilities. So if you just look at like what someone else has done that you look up to, and you're not copying it, it's more like you're just looking how to arrange the elements that you've put out in your music and over like a span of time. So it's that's really helped me a lot.
Yeah, so just diving into that, I'm curious, like the approach that you'd use. I assume you'd line up the tempo, so that way it's on a grid, assuming the song is on the grid, and then you might chop it at like the verses and choruses, the bridges.
Yeah, basically. I mean, yeah, you can learn about structure. I mean, honestly, learning the pop formula for arrangement is really important, I think, for most people.
Now, if people don't know it, are you able to just give them a piece of it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is gonna butcher it, but it's like intro, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, outro, and there also could be like a part B if you want to get real fancy with it. But that's like the bread and butter, I feel like, honestly, for the music I make. And if you look at a lot of songs, even like these like really like abstract electronic songs, they a lot of times follow that same formula. So that can just like take away, I think, months of experimentation, like, and not knowing where you're going. It's like just having like a bit of structure to work with there. And it obviously works because, pop songs are like super popular. Yeah.
And it's lasted over time too. Given that you have that structure, how do you create freedom for solos and not go too far astray that you're going to miss the next part, especially in a live setting? There's no take two.
Yeah, I think like, it's all about what you want to do. So it's kind of like if you know that this is there, you can kind of like bend it to your own style, which I've definitely done for my own music. It's like I don't rigidly say it's got to have an intro that's this long, and it's you take those ideas and then kind of like how you're feeling about it. It's like, does it feel good to have this long intro? Sometimes people say no because we want to get to the point quicker, but if you need it there, then leave it. But yeah, it's I think it's more just having that reference point that helps. And for shows, you can obviously like can extend a part. I'm not doing everything live when I play. The only like fully live aspect would be like the samples I trigger and then my guitar. So I'm basically like creating a DJ mix where I like have elements of the songs pulled out. So I guess you could say it's like 80% of the music is kind of there, and then I'm adding in like 20%. It just sounds better to me, and it's a lot like more simple to convey what I want to convey during that.
How do you make sure that that 20% stays the 20%, of freedom? That 25 doesn't like start creeping over and then suddenly it has a cascade effect against the, assembled order.
Practice, like create moments where you're allowed the freedom, I think. So I'll have moments in the track where it's like, okay, I know that I got a solo for this part of the song. And it's like music I've made, so I know like, okay, I can solo here. And I'd love to be able to, like, I love jam bands. So one day I'd love to be able to just have it where I can loop things better and like, just kind of take off on a different tangent. But I don't see a way to give the show experience I want to give and do that at the same time right now.
Yeah, no, I think it's valid too, because you're presenting in the best way that you can, and part of that is using what you've already created. So it's very natural, in my opinion. A lot of your songs have horns, or is this all synth on the keyboard? Do you know somebody? Do you play yourself?
Yeah, I have a couple friends. One was in college with me. He was actually like in the jazz program, and his name's Chris Malloy. He I think does his music as Cuff Malloy, and so all the saxophone stuff you've heard on like earlier music of mine is pretty much all him. And then I have another horn player friend actually from LA, and his name's Ryan Svedson, and he does all the horns. I believe you can hit him up on Sound Better if you need some horns there. And yeah, no, he's really great. So he plays trumpet, and he can kind of give you that like just full horn sound, to fill out your song.
What would you like to share with the listener? What do you want? A takeaway or last thoughts, parting words, wisdom, things like that.
I hope you all enjoyed this. Yeah, I know. I feel like it's been really cool to be able to share my process, and hope you all enjoy the music that's coming up. South has been a pretty daunting project for me in a lot of ways, but at the same time, like, I don't know, I want it to be like the best thing I've made yet. So can't let that trip you up, but at the same time, you know?
No pressure. So what are you going to be doing after Compass completes? There's a big void for many years.
Yeah, maybe some more vocal stuff. I've actually got a few vocal tracks in the works this year. Cool. So there'll be some singles coming out over the course of this year that have more vocal like lead on them. And yeah, collaborations. I've got some few concepts for albums, but yeah, there'll definitely be a remix EP, which is something I've done for each of the EPs I've done. So there's a remix for East, West, and North. And yeah, it's been really cool to be able to like work with other artists in that capacity and like have them kind of reimagine the tunes, and it's been good for everybody.
That's a great strategy. Get different people's thoughts to shape it in a new way. That's cool. Thanks so much for your time. I want to make sure everybody knows where to find you online and your links. So if you want to, if somebody out there is looking to contact you, what's the best platform for you?
Yeah, I mainly focus on Instagram these days. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Koresma Music, and that is the same handle across all of like Twitter and Facebook, and I believe now TikTok. And yeah, you also have like an email, so koresmamusic@gmail.com if you want to hit me up. And then my website is www.koresmamusic.com. So Koresma Music, that's what it is basically.
All right, and then let's just spell it out in case somebody's driving or something and they can't look at it.
Yeah, so it's spelled Koresma, and then music.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I really am grateful for your music and you sharing, being an open book here.
Thanks so much, man. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on the podcast.
Listening to the Freio Music Podcast with Michael Morahan. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single episode. And don't forget to share this podcast everywhere. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay tuned.